how dare we discriminate against the teacher and just move them to an elementary school? And and in lieu of that, you want to use guidance counselors
I
and
didn't say
like
I
the
said and
entire
other
school
counselors.
system, right? Like to try and fix these 14-year-old boys that are distracted by the super hot teacher. That is like, even from a consequentialist perspective, even from your leftist framework, the amount of money and time and care and like difficulty is so much more in one direction than the other that this is just a silly argument at this
Topic 2. A Canadian trans teacher has gone viral for coming to class wearing fake and massive breast inserts. Fake bust is so prominent that the nipples are clearly outlined by the shirts they wear. Would you call this inappropriate for a classroom setting? If you believe it's a problem, what exactly is offensive about it? If you think it's fine, then is there any limit to a person's self-expression that would be disruptive in a school environment? So yeah, this is something I was sent. I look, I'm not entirely sure this is a fucking real thing. I'm not so convinced that this is a
Canadians
real
never
thing.
lie.
It
Oh,
could
that's
be the
true.
onion.
No, this is not that. But still, one way or the other, let's take it at face value, right? So we have a teacher showing up to class, and the pictures that were shown, person with a massive bust, right? A massive bust, and within
Cartoonishly massive.
cartoonishly massive bust.
Can you tell people to look it up because you have to see it in order to
Yeah,
appreciate it?
You
Yeah.
really do. You really do.
I'll put the link.
Uh,
I'll put the link in chat. I'll put the link in chat.
Anime level.
It's
Anime
inhuman.
levels.
I'll put the link in chat, guys. So there's a link. So you can see the picture, right? So assuming this is real, right? Like, do we? I mean, is this actually a problem? If should there action being taken, and why is it? So we're just gonna take it on face value. This is a real thing for now. All right. There might be evidence that comes out that says it's not real, and I want to know that I reserved the right here to take this all back. So we'll start with my friend Lactoid, who's calmed down by now. And hopefully maybe direct his latent rage at the topic and not me. Please, Lactoid.
Yeah, no problem. For anybody who I feel like any opinion that I share, unless you've seen the photos, like may seem sort of ignorant. I think you have to see the photos. And when I first saw the photos, I was also skeptical because of just how wild it is. But I found multiple different news sources that seem to corroborate what was happening. So it appears like this is true. My opinion here is that I understand critiques of dress codes, but I think this is pretty clear that it's very silly and very hypersexualized. It's just absurd. I do think we need dress codes in school, and I think we'd be very careful when it comes to sexualizing children. We should not have bulging nipples on a teacher in front of a place where kids are forced to go and witness instruction. So I already have a massive problem with that part, right? The bulging nipples, that shouldn't happen. As to the actual size of the breasts themselves, let's take for a moment if they were natural, like if they were that big, I'm assuming it'd be a health issue. And if it's a health issue or like a biological abnormality, I'd probably be willing to make an exception. But I have an issue with people dramatically exaggerating the size of their sexual organs in a setting with children. I mean, what would we think if some teacher stuffed their pants with a pool noodle and beach balls every day just before they got up to go in front of a bunch of kids to teach? Would we be okay with that? It just seems like we're having an issue establishing some pretty common sense protections and limitations here for the benefit of children. I think we should be very careful when we're sexualizing children in that we don't do it. And we should be very, very careful when we expose children to sexuality. And this seems to be like a pretty common, like, it's a little bit off topic, but I mean, there's also people who, will dye their eyes or like get horns and they'll go and they'll get fired and, they complain. I just wonder if this is a problem of like kids or adults without a working brain not remembering what it's like to be a child. I think that's kind of the underlying problem here.
Let's go to our friend Scott.
All right, so first things first. In the name of honesty, when I take an L, I'll take a fucking L, and I'll do so publicly. They do not specifically calculate race. They only calculate income, crime stats, population density, etc. What I had misremembered, apparently, is that black people on average are given roughly 230 points higher than whites in their SAT scores. And this stuff is still blind. So it's no longer like you don't know if what your test score really is or how it's done in such a way by your individual neighborhood. But you know, fuck it, he's right. I still think it's racist gerrymandering, but at the end of the day, like they do not specifically.
Race isn't even a factor. What?
Yeah, sure. It seems like a way to sneak in that bit, even without them specifically doing it. But I mean, I guess if
look that up and admit you're wrong
I'll
about
take
that too
L.
later.
No, it's okay. But like I said, I'll take an L if I take an L. Yeah, I thought it was. It doesn't. It doesn't actually include race. That being said, looking at this this man, this woman, this man, this man has autogonophilia, right? Like this is not a trans person. This is some sick fetishist weirdo that is putting on gargantuan prosthetic fake breasts with no bra to garner tons of attention. And they're a sick weirdo. This is not someone that's slowly transitioned, that like is struggling with this disorder. No, they're doing insane things to their body with prosthetics. And they're obviously some issues. And more than that, what is occurring is really just a natural progression of critical theory, right? It's critical race theory, critical gender studies, and eventually we'll have critical age theory. If you don't believe me and you don't think pedophilia is coming from the left, just look up sexual citizenship for children. Anyways, so what is occurring here is when you have a public school system where the government has these jobs, and then you have this ideology that is able to infect what is a liberal democracy, you can't discriminate against people just because they're weird or you don't like them or because you think something is inappropriate. You have to have these weird, hard lines in the sand, and you're dealing with a philosophy that is conceived of subversion. The dialectic, the entire point of the dialectic is to analyze and then reorder power dynamics and then synthesize. And so when you see the destruction of gender and the ideas of these things, you see the watering down and breakdown of definitions. And that's why this school themselves came out and defended this person and said that, we believe in inclusivity and, and all these things. And like, this person is just living their life, etc. Except they didn't mention the person specifically. They made a general statement, but they're obviously making that statement because of this person. So, if you want to fix this problem, you need to get your kids out of public schools. You need to homeschool or private school, and you need to do everything you can to stop Corey DeAngelis from getting school choice, because school choice will be infected by UNESCO standards, and you'll see this shit in every private school in America. So that's my opening statement.
So much, and respect to you, Scott, for admitting you were wrong in that, and owning up to it. Shout out to you, Scott. Let's go. Better man than me. Let's go to Corey.
Yeah, and I'll also echo that sentiment that you just said, Prime. Respect to you, Scott, for doing that. Well, I'm Canadian, a filthy Canadian, much like Lactoid. But despite that, Lactoid got some things wrong, or at least not totally framing it accurately based off of this story, assuming it's factual. So this is a high school, and it seems like it's grade 9s to 12. So I think it's like teenagers. I would imagine if it's 9 to 12, it's the ages of like 14 to 17. So I don't think it's explicitly children. Teenagers, you can say they're still kids, maybe developmentally, but I think that there's still talks about sex at that age. So I think that needs to be taken into account. But I'll address sort of your larger point later on about whatever, the hypersexualization of kids, which I'm against, but I don't think that applies here. But pretty much to wrap it up, try to be short because I'll address the larger points later on. I don't see this as I can admit that it looks pretty silly, but I don't have a personal issue with it. As in, I don't see this as contributing to anything overly negative, and this is nothing for me. But maybe I'm just too radicalized, and whatever. like to the point of bulging nipples. Like, so in the dress code, if you're going to outlaw, like on principle, all bulging nipples, then I don't know if you really thought of all the ramifications of that, and that children should never be exposed to nipples ever. I don't think you actually thought out the ramifications of that either, fully. But I'll address that later on. So I'll end it there for now.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Maybe like breastfeeding or something, I guess.
That is a question.
This is going to be a wild conversation. Let's go to my man. Brilliant as always.
Of course. Listen, I'm known for my brilliance. It's really crazy how you can like admit you're wrong in one sentence and then try to like justify it afterwards and be like, but it's racist still. Like what? They don't consider race, but it's racist. But yeah, ultimately, I would say that like I think this situation is just more of like an evidence of what the left is doing, right? Because like there were arguments in the beginning where people kept saying, "Hey, it seems like these people are trying to groom kids." And the fact that the left can be tolerant is what such an egregious example only hurts their cause. Because to me, I think nothing's going to wake people more up to this fact more so than something like this, where it's so blatant, it's so in your face, and it's basically showing us there is absolutely no limit. When you can be this ridiculous, I remember having that psycho conversation with those idiots with PrimeCayes friends, and they were sitting there telling me that a penis is not a sex organ, or that a penis isn't inherently sexual, and that breasts aren't sexual. And I'm talking about like having children at Pride looking at dildo suits and all sorts of nonsense. So when that can be part of the conversation, then of course, why wouldn't a teacher be able to put these ridiculous nonsense in their body and then like try to teach our kids? My kids is going to be homeschooled. I won't have it. This is ridiculous. Leftists are coming for your kids. Y'all got to be careful.
Well, we are. It's true. Let's go to our friend Wick, please.
So I spent some time, because this isn't the first I saw it. This has been coming on my timeline for the last few days, right? So at
The
first
algorithm has you. The algorithm has you.
I guess so, right? I saw this coming in my timeline, and I was like, this has to be fake. This cannot be real. And I looked into it. No, the school responded to this. As far as I can tell, this is an actual teacher in Canada. To be clear, right? This is a Canadian teacher. And yeah, this is a real thing. My question would be to those who would support something like this: do you think you would still support it if a male teacher came in with a huge prosthetic dong and just hanging there, clearly visible, like through the pants, and teaching like that? I would think, and I would speculate that most of you would be like, no, that's not okay. Like if you have an issue like that, you dress appropriately so that people don't see your bulging erections or bulging nipples or things like that. This idea, right, that we have to be inclusive of literally everything, I'm not for that, right? I think that this is clearly not okay to have around children. Like, it wasn't something she was born with, right? This is a prosthetic choice. It's just not conducive to a good learning environment, and I don't feel that that's in any way transphobic or anything like that. I think that's just reality of things, and I think that trying to paint this as some sort of inclusive battle, no, there's fight on a different hill, gang. That's all.
Build of hatred. Right, you just can't control. Thank you, buddy. Okay. And Scott, what's going on with your camera? You're working on something there?
Shh, don't worry about it.
Okay, all right. Let's go to Waterkai.
All right, so pretty much Lactoid and Wick hit on exactly what I was going to say to this. Whenever you see an extreme in one direction, put it in the other direction. So take a female that is transitioning to male and gets a giant prosthetic. That's just not going to be cool for most people. Thanks a lot, Scott. We don't need it. We don't need it at all. Thanks a lot. Grooming the people in this room, like all these.
What are you talking about? This is clearly appropriate to be in school with children, right? I mean, the Canadian school system and Corey say it's perfectly appropriate. Like, why can't it
Blame
be on
Canada.
screen?
Blame
This is like
Canada
Canada.
then.
We can't.
So,
I'm sorry. You
like,
want me to
that's
pick,
all you
all
need
right,
to
I'm
do.
sorry. I'll pick a different photo. I'm sorry.
No, no, we don't need
overdose.
another
Oh
photo.
my
So,
god. Go please.
jeez.
Mordecai.
So back to these the RYYZN that are grooming children, people like Jesse Lee Peterson and Matt Gates, bringing girls across state lines. They're the ones that are really grooming your children. Be afraid for them. They're the ones going to jail for it or going under investigation for it. I am terrified.
Okay, please. Next we'll go to our friend Aiko, who stopped by here. Hello, friend.
How's it
Thanks
going?
for being here. Please introduce yourself, and then on to the second topic.
Oh, I got Rich. I'm that's I've been on here a few times. I don't really stream yet, but I might in the future at some point. But yeah, that's it. Listen, when I saw this, honestly, I just saw this. I was driving in home from work, which is why I didn't come on the panel earlier. And I just saw this like for the first time like an hour ago. So I don't know. Like I tried to do a little bit of research before just popping on screen, and I didn't see a whole lot of sources yet. I suspect it'll make its way through the cycle eventually, and maybe get fact checked a little bit. But from what I can tell, like my first reaction, somebody who works in the schools and had to ask questions about appropriateness of other teachers in the school. In the past, my first instinct was to say, okay, how could I possibly justify this? I'm trying to cycle it through my head. How would we react if a cis woman got a breast increase surgery to this extent? And I don't think it would be considered acceptable in the schools in that instance. So I don't see how it would be any more acceptable in this instance. I think, I would have to think a little bit more about what the specific bases would be on making those kinds of decisions. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why the school sort of hesitated to react right away, because they're going to have to come up with some sort of rule that when applied, once they apply it here, they have to apply it to everyone else. But really, I just don't see any way to justify it. I think ultimately, when they stop and think about it, when they talk to some of the parents, they're going to have to reverse their decision if they did make a final decision in this call, because this really isn't. I'd like to know more about why this person made this choice, what kind of diagnoses they might have. But I'm just really struggling to come up with any kind of a justification for it in any school setting.
Thank you so much. And next we'll go to our Dark Lord Saver Doobie, please.
I think Scott kind of hit the nail on the head. I think this is like autogynephilia. Clearly, I think that we every time something like this comes up, right? It's like, oh, you're doing the slippery slope thing by accusing these people of being pedophiles, wanting to groom children, and wanting to be inappropriate in front of children. But it seems like we just keep getting further down that fucking slope. Like we had this talk during the drag queen thing, during the dildos at the Pride Parade in front of children thing, during all there's so many I can't even fucking remember them all. Right? These like random like little I'm gonna call them like microaggressions, right, against decency. Right?
Woke.
And it just seems like it just needles in, and every time leftists come with their fucking shields, I'm like, oh no, this is fun. You're a bigot if you say otherwise, and yada yada yada. But there's a fucking line, right? And I think this is way over the line. Where somebody buying prosthetic boobs and wearing them with their nipples out in front of kids, like, no, come on. I brought this up in my chat, my server earlier, right? And the fucking arguments that I was getting from the lefties in my mod team were just depressing as fuck. And nipples aren't really sexual. If you think that's sexual, that's on you. Like, what the fuck? And the funniest part of this whole fucking story, because this is like a recent transitioner, right? Like last year. So this is like the first school year that this person is like transitioning, quote unquote. And there's a name change. And I think it's really funny. It's very sus that the last name is Lemieux or Lemieux.
Best.
That's the last name Lemieux, like a fucking cow with big ass udders. Like, come on, it's on the nose. It's too far.
Is that when they transitioned?
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
Whoa.
That is the new name.
That is the new name. That's what I was showing was their fake email account that has like the doctored face where they're like a gorgeous woman with like it's like who cow shit. It's insane.
Okay, so we're
So
gonna
Prime, are none of your
Prime,
friends here?
specifically, I blame you, Prime, for this. Okay, you running defense for these fucking degenerates. Okay, I blame you.
Yeah, Prime, are none of your friends here? Because it seems like everybody here like has enough common sense. Even the Fabian has enough common sense to
Well,
recognize this is
don't
stupid.
don't worry, because as you know, sense is not something I am born with. Sense is not something I have in abundance. So here we go. All right, I don't remember what my friend Corey said, but like, I, in terms of this, what I'm trying to do is distill what is the problem. Okay, this looks clownish to me. All right, let me be very, very clear. This looks clownish, but I'm trying to distill what is exactly the issue here. Right?
The exaggeration is the issue.
The exaggeration. Okay.
It's the nipples specifically. It's the nipples.
No, you don't see them.
What do you mean
You
you don't
obviously see them.
No, you see full nipple exposure. Like this person can whatever.
Look,
like
if someone with okay, so if they made any effort to kind of like cover it up or
Wear a fucking bra,
downplay it
like,
or
the fucking bare
anything,
minimum.
that's a difference. But what this person is specifically doing is they are choosing and deciding to wear a prosthetic that not only doesn't diminish it, but it actively,
okay, yeah.
What's the word? Extenuates. I'm blanking on this. Exaggerates. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. It exaggerates this, and that is the issue. It's the exaggeration. It's not a natural thing. It would be one thing if they were just simply born this way. It was part of their natural body, and they took measures, right, to decentuate it. But this is not what is happening. And we don't have to.
No, there's nothing inherently wrong by the philosophy that is encouraged on the left and by having government institutions corrupted by this. That's the fucking problem. Is that all of us instinctively look at that and go, this person's a fucking weirdo. What the fuck is wrong with this? But most people, when you ask them, like if you're tried and true to your principles as a leftist, you're like, this person is a person that wants to identify as trans. This person is a person that has a right to model their body as they see fit, and they have a right to, not be discriminated against in government employment. So if you follow regular left-wing philosophy, you should be perfectly okay with this. But it's going so far over the line that there's something innate in you that goes, this is fucking gross and weird and sexualizing kids. And that's the fucking red flag that maybe should trigger you to go, there's something wrong with my fucking philosophy if I can justify this, but I can look at it and know that it's fucked.
First of all,
Corey, then Lactoid.
Yeah. So I mean, let's try and isolate some variables as best we can, as in so Wick, if I may ask, it seems like you were taking issue with, the hint of nipples, as in to Doobie's point.
What do you mean the hint? These things are bigger than my head.
Yeah, we got it. Let's
if you ever see, I'm hoping you know what real nipples look like.
He doesn't.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
So to Doobie's point, as in, would this now be permissible to you if they wore a bra and whatever the nipples weren't visible?
Yes, that would be okay if it was simply just large and they were there. It wouldn't be ideal, but I would be less. I would have less of a response than I do if it was made the attempt at some sort of modesty, for lack of a better term.
Ooh, very puritanical.
I think
maybe
that's
yeah. So, and also to clarify and make everything clear, I guess you can maybe loosely use the term kids or children. This is grade 9s to 12. This is in a specific high school, and so to Lactoid, going back to your original argument, so you want no nipple exposure to any child ever. Is that your prescription?
Okay. So this actually plays into what I was going to say.
Backtrack.
Yeah, you can call it backtracking.
Corey's just proving me right, by the way.
So generally, I would not be in favor of showing 14-year-olds accentuated nipples. Although I can even think of sexualized situations in which the nipples are covered that I would also not be okay with. So let's say you had a teacher who part-timed as a stripper, and she came into math class with nothing but pasties on and like a thong. Technically, all the parts are covered, right? Technically. But clearly, taken in totality, this is a highly suggestive and highly sexualized outfit. I think this person, by having, and bulging nipples are part of that. They're not required, but they are part of that. this person is obviously like having accentuated sexual features with giant bulging nipples, with tits that are just comically large. They can't be comfortable. I mean, that must weigh a ton. I mean, the back muscles on this person need to be.
It's probably like just like rubber, like a.
That's how you know it's fucking AGB.
But like,
yeah,
that's how you know it's autogonophilia. Like it's like this isn't like respect for the female form and to want to become a female. This is a fucking weirdo with a paraphilic disorder.
And then I want to say one more thing, Corey. I as much as I disagree with you, and as much as I think that the panel's being reasonable, I do actually somewhat hold the belief that in the future, Corey, like we're going to look back on this and you might be like, more people might agree with you than us. It might be that we're seen as bigots, and it might be that, the modern mainstream is like, oh, that was ridiculous. How, look how far we've come as a people now that we're accepting, now that we've accepted this. I think that's a very real possibility. And so you might be,
I appreciate that, Olive Branch. And so, I want to sort of, again, tease out. So, like, the scenario that you brought up in terms of, like, whatever, just a stripper going to class, I think that's covered by the dress code. And it seems like, this teacher, as far as I can tell, like, they're complying with the dress code. And so, like,
amended to not allow bulging nipples.
So like,
clearly somebody found a loophole. Okay.
Yeah. So, like, when it comes to like nipple exposure, like, so at what age should like nipple exposure like stop or start? As in, like, so
if you're a minor,
no.
If you're a minor and you're forced, you are compelled by law to go to a public school, like, we should be very careful about your nipple exposure. We can't be exposing
like the peers among the teenagers at the high school, as in like the dress code.
Yes, yes. Teenage girls should not be like having bulging nipples come out of their
like,
bra.
and also shirtless guys as well, presumably.
Yeah, guys should not be shirtless in school, for sure. Yeah, I would be in favor of these rules to protect children. And I think the Doobie makes a good point. I think Doobie and Scott make a good point here, where it does seem like every time there's like a suggestion that's going too far, people, oh, this is bigotry, this is ridiculous that you would compare us to this. Platforms even ban people historically for doing this. And then, like, this shit happens. At what point do we get to say we told you so? Like, how bad does it have to get? Like, if she shows up like butt naked, at that point, can we say, hey, there might be a problem here? Or is that like bigoted too?
So can I ask a follow-up question in terms of, so it seems like your concern is, the sexualization of teenagers in this instance, and like, showing any hint of sexuality is whatever, some sort of like moral degradation.
Not any hint. Like, this is more than a hint.
Okay, so like, showing nipples, this is automatically sexual. So how do you feel about violence? As in, like, I'm assuming you're also like against any displays of violence on school.
Yeah, I would keep schools relatively violence-free.
So would you agree that there should be no guns on school?
I don't think guns are inherently violence, right? Well, like, I mean, you could say that like in the same way that, like,
what? So okay, nipples inherently in all cases sexual, guns not always violent, especially when it's an armed presence on school.
I mean, that's an interesting point. Like, if there's studies that show that like displaying firearms to children like does lead to bad outcomes, maybe I would have a regulation that like the SCOs that actually have guns have to conceal them. That could be something we could do. We could include that in the dress code. If you agree that we can't have giant, like, tomato can sized nipples bulging.
What tomatoes are you buying?
Utility, like Corey, real quick. Wait, you can see utility. You can see utility to having a taser or a gun. You may not agree with utility, but you can see some utility maybe of having these tools on campus. What utility is this huge, like, bulging nipple bringing that outweighs perhaps the issues we would have exposing minors to that kind of sexuality?
You fucking bigot! It's the freedom for this person to express
we place
who
limits
they
on freedom all
feel
the
on
time,
the inside, outside. That's real quick.
Okay,
but real quick, the thing that I hate the most about this is that it like vindicates these boomer conservatives that were like, if you let the gays get married, this shit's gonna happen. And it's like, no, it's not. And then it's like, fuck, they were right.
No, like this is my problem, right? Like,
just
to echo Fabian right here. To echo Fabian right here, there's this tendency on the left, because of our desire to be allies, that we buy in to conservative memes of us, and they say it as a joke. right? Thinking no one's going to agree with that. And then some lefty somewhere is deciding, yes, I 100% agree with
Okay,
that in order to signal their
Sure.
virtue.
Complain about the lefties on Twitter. That's nice.
Oh, it's
Corey, finish
always
up your point,
lefties.
and then I want to hear from Doobie, and then I'm going to jump in here, right? Because I'm not going to let Doobie hang here alone. Sorry, Corey hang here alone. And I really want to have a conversation about this because I think this being treated on its face ridiculous, and a lot of it's fucking ridiculous. But I really want to like narrow this down. So Corey, finish up your point, and then let's go to our friend Doobie.
Yeah, well, I'll just wrap up as quickly as I can, just in terms of like to address sort of like again, I think there's a clear inconsistency there in terms of like whatever you're potentially okay, or like at some point you were okay with like exposing children, or children seeing guns, fine on schools. But then if there's bulging nipples, but they're still technically covered, then it's automatically like sexualization of teenagers, which I don't think is like inherently bad. Because like 9 to 12, like they're still exploring sexual. I think they know what nipples are, what they look like at that
14.
point. Yeah, and again, I don't think nipples is like so a foreign concept to like a 14-year-old. No matter like what size or how bulging they are, like I'm hoping
Dog,
this
stop.
is a Canadian.
This is a fucking anime character come into fucking life from like a weirdo with a fucking sexual dysfunction that they're
also
displaying in the classroom to children.
Corey, you're also missing.
You don't let him diagnose like that.
So if I were a trans man, right, like biologically a female, but I specifically identified as a man with a 20-inch dick that was like as thick as a fucking soda bottle.
That's why I identify.
Right? And I wore this to class in very, very tight pants, in fucking leggings, right? So you can see the outline of everything.
The veins.
You'd be okay with that, Corey? You'd be fine? You think that's fine?
If it complied with the dress code, like
You're
I don't
nuts.
see anything
I-
like
Stop,
especially if it's
Corey,
prosthetic,
stop.
like if
You
it's
don't have
prosthetic,
to.
like
Change the dress
okay,
code.
first of all, like
Stop
what makes
the
this
cap.
like I have no problem like having this conversation, engaging with this point of like
but you're not really engaging. This is really insane. You're being dishonest as freak, and it's crazy.
No, I'm not. No,
Lactoid did the same thing earlier, and now you're doing it. It's the thing where like people are engaging you and they're asking you like what are the limits and so on and so forth. And like you like for Lactoid, it was when you talked about the guns. It's like well. The left will say, well, nipples aren't inherently sexual, even though everyone knows intuitively that nipples are sexual. Lactoid did the same dishonest nonsense when he goes, a gun is not inherently violent, when we all know that, right? And then when you ask him, like, okay, wait a minute, like, so you'd be okay with this? And it's like, well, if you can show me studies that show that guns are problematic to kids and so on and so forth. It's like this appeal, this question for studies in order to do things that we intuitively know. Now, when I'm on the receiving end of that, that's when I stop engaging with people, right? Like if I'm like saying like we all know that like educated people make more money. Do you have a study to say that? And it's like, okay, if I have to find a study to tell you the things that we intuitively know, I'm not engaging with you anymore because you're not honestly engaging. So when you start appealing towards studies or like, well, hold on, it just really only boils down to what the dress code says, right? Now, we're all talking about what intuitively makes sense because then at this point, if we were to point out to you that if a dress code said that something that was like obviously ridiculous was okay, it should automatically, we're talking about like from a moral point or from a common sense point, intuitively we know that this is problematic and harmful. But when you just go ahead and say, nope, as long as the dress code said it's okay, then I don't care at all, then you're not engaging in the conversation anymore. It's dishonest as freak. Stop.
I mean, you can call like I only know my beliefs, but I'll let you go, Prop.
Doobie,
Can I say one more thing on that?
You say one more thing, then I want to hear from Doobie. Then I'm going to jump in.
Yeah, my official position. I obviously had to think about it, I guess, for 10 seconds. The guns should probably be concealed, I guess, if there's a concern there. I do think though that the even if there was maybe like some trauma associated with seeing a gun, I think the intention of having an armed officer there is to protect kids from being killed, which is very different, I think, than the intention here. So even like if the kids knowing that the guards had like concealed weapons on them might like bother them, I would take that being bothered over like them being more susceptible to mass shootings, as opposed to like giant tits, which don't seem to serve any kind of inherent purpose to the kids other than just sexualize them.
Let's go to our friend Doobie, please.
I think Corey is insane, to be honest. I thought you were a reasonable person before this. Like you're basically so. I don't even know how to respond. So if I were like to wear pants, like let's say like a pair of pants that had like an elephant trunk at the front, right? So like my dick was technically covered, but it was slipped through this elephant trunk and just swinging in the fucking breeze in front of these children. Right? Let's say
No, okay, first,
let's say
that's
elementary school kids.
exposure. That's different.
Wait, why? Well, hold on.
Well, no,
but it's covered, right? It's covered by an
Okay,
elephant
okay,
trunk.
yeah, okay. Sorry, I misunderstood. Go ahead.
Just flopping around in front of these kids. You think that's okay? That's not sexualizing. That's not inappropriate.
That's why, like, I emphasize this is a high school. This is 9 to 12. It's totally different. Like,
She's like what, 15-year-olds, and that makes it okay.
14 to 18.
13. I was 13 in high school.
No. So
Wait,
this
hold
is
on.
in Canada.
13 to 18. That's okay.
No. This is in Canada. This is grades 9 to 12. Like, I looked at the high school. It seems like they specifically,
Yeah,
whatever,
that's when you can be 13 years old in high school.
Yeah, but I don't think I don't remember correct. I guess grade 9 can be 13.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll concede that you are correct. So, like, in the scenario that you outlined of, like, you know, everything's technically covered, but whatever, there's a hint of something swinging around.
Not a hint.
Okay.
It's just my dick's
Well, like,
out, like, within this pocket.
Can you show
and
me the
it's, like,
same
flopping about.
visual as this woman? Like,
Yeah, I'll DM
Like,
you.
Yeah,
I'll DM
hold
you.
on. Just look up elephant trunk fucking underwear, right? Like, imagine
Yeah,
that
so
with, like,
I
at
want
that
this
point, like,
clear. He asked for
I-
this. I want
I've
it
got a
clear
bunch
that
of
he
them back.
asked for
I got a bunch of them in my closet.
like,
here.
oh, first of all, like, you were saying this is sexual. Is anybody here sexually turned on by this? Like, is this really, like, getting into the realm of, like,
I think the teacher's sexually turned on by this.
It's a trans
That's why they're
person.
doing it.
You can't say that because we're not sexually turned on, but it's a trans person. Like, and we all know that. Like, there's a very, very big difference. Come on.
even I concede it of, like, whatever.
False. I fucking love me some trans girls. Not this fucking weirdo.
Okay, well,
even if I
you're part of the 0. I mean, part of the 3% of the people on the planet that do.
Okay, so, like, I can attempt to engage with this. Like, even if I will gladly concede this is whatever sexualization of something. So what is, when it comes to these whatever 13 to 17, 18-year-olds, like, explain to me, like, sort of the negativity associated with that.
Why is
Just,
this
like,
an appropriate space for an adult in position of authority to be sexualizing themselves at all?
well, I don't. What is it that makes it, again? That brings down to the conversation of, like, they're clothed. There's no actual, like,
What makes
exposure.
a high school an inappropriate space for a teacher to be sexualizing themselves? Like, is
I
that
don't
the
know
question
that-
you're asking me?
No. Like, that's where we're having the conversation of, like, what makes this inherently sexual, other than, like, you see the bulging nipples. Okay, like, they're fully clothed, and, like, I think there's
It's
even
in Western cultures, in Canada, right? I don't even want to call you guys Western at this point. In Canada,
fair.
right? Are breasts sexualized within the culture?
I'll put it in nerd speak for you. Extremely over-exaggerated secondary sexual characteristics. It is inherently sexualized.
Yeah. So we have, so breastfeeding in public is allowable in Canada. And, like,
That's not that's
like,
a
and that's-
natural
that-
event.
that serves
that
a
is occurring.
utility.
why does that
that's
disturb you?
not
Like,
that's not an intentional exaggeration of a secondary sexual characteristic to children.
okay, so how would you, like,
Like,
modify?
can
Go
can
ahead.
you just take that like maybe we shouldn't intentionally exaggerate secondary sexual characteristics or primary sexual characteristics
That's a different.
in a classroom environment, right?
That's, like, I think that's a different question than, like, how they're engaging in the classroom. Like, as far as I can tell, they're still teaching. They're still, like, carrying out their duties. And based
Right.
off of that small
Don't pivot.
article,
Don't pivot. Like, can we just admit that we shouldn't intentionally exaggerate secondary sexual characteristics in a school or classroom environment where children should be focusing on shop class, right? They should be paying attention to shop class, but instead they're making fucking TikToks being like, holy shit, look at this insane person in shop class. And now one of the kids might cut off their
Okay,
fucking finger
okay,
because they
Corey,
don't know how to use a
that's-
goddamn
Corey, let me
bandsaw
try real
because
quick.
they're looking at this fucking fake fucking hookah utter shit.
No, this is great. Corey, would you be okay? But just real quick, Corey, you'd be okay, right, with a child commenting like, "Hey, teacher, your hair looks nice today." Pretty okay comment, right? Would you be okay with a, "Hey, teacher, nice tits"?
well, that's a totally. Well, first of all, that.
Oh yeah, it's totally
there-
different. That's
No,
what
no,
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
that
There's
falls
something
into-
special about tits, right? That we acknowledge as a societal level that you don't treat the same as other characteristics of the body.
But the
like
teacher's not
hair,
saying that to
fingers,
the
and
students.
things
They are
like that.
showing up to class wearing, presumably, whatever, still clothing, and, like, just
They're making
their
a
second.
statement.
Their secondary sex characteristics, like, are pretty much, like, whatever, forced through the clothing. They're not wearing
Okay.
whatever, like a crop top or anything.
They're wearing a
like that.
So let-
prosthetic that that has fake secondary sexual characteristics on it. Like it's not even real. They're doing this on purpose.
So let me give it a try. Okay. All right. So again, I saw your hand. The point is to isolate what is the problem. Okay. All right. So we've established that nipples are a problem, at least among individuals here. Yeah, nipples are a problem. Most dress codes, like if a teacher of a natural average size bust showed up and had her nipples poking out the entire time, she'd probably get pulled aside in the classroom from the classroom and told you got to be put on a bra, right, or thicker bra, whatever it is, right? Probably would happen. So we'll say that in this case, this individual is violating that code, right? Violating that basic sense of decency there. Okay. What about then? The other thing you guys are saying are the comically large size, and it is comical. But there are people out there. There are women who are naturally busty, right? Naturally this size. Is that person? Would they be disqualified as a teacher? If it's a woman who is just naturally
They'd be expected to wear a bra.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agreed already. I'd agree to that.
Mrs. Chokes on Dicks from South Park was not supposed to be our fucking future as a culture, all right?
Sure.
It was supposed to be a fucking joke.
Answer my question.
It was supposed to be absurd.
Sure, that's fun. That's nice.
I actually agree with you and Corey in the sense that I said this is the logical conclusion of the philosophy in public school and government jobs. Right. What we should do is privatize education. And then if you don't like somebody, you can fire them.
Fanatic. I'll throw it to you, Fanatic. If a woman who is naturally busty and like this individual, right? If they come in, are they disqualified for being a teacher?
No, I think the school would go out of their way. There's plenty of things that you can do to like reduce it, right? Because if it became distracting, it would be problematic. So you could do things like compression bras. You could do things like again, like specific types of bras that would like specifically cover up the nipples. There are things you could do to reduce that. It just doesn't make any sense to
what is the okay? Great. So you're saying that the size itself,
or just a regular bra,
is a problem. No, yeah. And look, we've already moved past the nipple thing, right? So we're past the nipple thing, and that like we're covering up the nipples. Okay, we're having a bra.
Okay,
that would take care of that. That's
acknowledged. If a person is just particularly well endowed, but but they're not like intentionally exaggerating or doing anything to enhance those things, I don't think any sane person on this panel or in the real world would have a problem with that.
No. Is that the case? Okay, so just a show of hands quickly, right? If there were a cis woman who showed up who was as naturally busty, wearing a bra, as this individual, that person would be qualified for a teacher, and you guys would be against any action taken against her, right?
Wait, as busty as this, I'm thinking just in generally well endowed. But if it's this absurd,
so what's the cup size limit then?
Probably, I don't know what the exact limit is, but I'm saying if it's to the point where obviously it's going to be up to the principal or the dean or whoever else in the freaking school to determine it. But I think there gets to a point where it's like this would definitely be distracting. I would absolutely say that, and I think children would have a harder time learning in such an environment, especially like high school kids.
So that means
you need to be able to discriminate against people even for things they can't control. Sorry. If you want to be, if I'm the principal of a school and I'm in charge of hiring and someone comes in with like 36 triple Z's, I'm going to be like, yeah, you're going to be a fucking distraction. You're not qualified to do this fucking job. Sorry. I'm going to be the person that's, that's a fucking ableist and say at a certain point, like this might not be the right fit for you.
Well, we already
fitting into the classroom.
No, just real quick, I'll let you go in a second. We already discriminate when it comes to immutable things. When it comes to teachers, intelligence is not very mutable as a characteristic. But we
know that here,
of it, right? And fair enough.
I'm right there with you.
But
would that qualify them for disability?
I think that
those potentially you could probably at the very least get a breast reduction surgery covered.
I think that like if someone is taking steps, Yeah,
gonna
if someone's
happen.
taking steps, like if
It shouldn't have. It's
oh,
disrespectful.
yeah, if someone has an abnormality like that and they're taking steps to reduce it and things like that, I give them much more grace, and I think that they maybe should be able to hold a job, depending, right? It would depend on the specific situation. But in this case, it clearly is something that's not just not being managed; it's being exaggerated on purpose.
No. Yeah. That's why I'm moving away from that.
Okay, fair.
But
Yeah, in general, I think that if someone's taking steps to mitigate it, then okay, I'd be okay with it. Right?
Lactoid, I see your hand up.
There are
We'll have
teachers.
Aiko
There
and
are
Lactoid,
teachers.
but
I'll be super quick, but there are teachers that are like just gorgeous women that are really curvy, and like people are like, like parents will get mad, and like it's always like it's the fucking husbands that are the really ones that are mad, and or the wife gets jealous or whatever, that are wearing like what would normally be professional clothing, but on their bodies are like really fucking distracting to, let's say, a 14-year-old boy with hormones, right?
oh,
And what I'm
there's
saying is you ought to be able to discriminate against those people. You ought to be able to say, like, you probably shouldn't be in a classroom with 14-year-old boys. You should probably be teaching elementary school because like kids are not going to be able to fucking focus.
or maybe try
class.
burqa, right?
They no.
I
Yeah,
mean,
see,
fuck
that
it.
makes
If you want to
perfect
wear one
sense.
in Salah,
So-
motherfucker, I don't care. But like,
They
I should be
literally-
able to not hire you.
They didn't allow Jessica Simpson. Like, she wanted to be a Christian singer because she was like brought up in a super Christian home, but her titties were too big, and they were just like, yeah, no, we can't have you sitting on a stage in front of like
Her body is simple.
young
Yeah.
Christian men.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just too much. It was too much.
She has a
it's not that her
simple
body was
body.
sinful. It's not that her body was sinful, but they realized it would be distracting.
No,
I think
but
there are
that,
points
like,
where things
yeah,
can be distracting.
that's like
Paragons of
but if they
tolerance.
but if Christians use burqas, then it'd be fine because Muslims already figured this out, right? Like they
We
already
have-
figured it
Yeah,
out.
no. In Saudi
Exactly.
Arabia,
True.
the morality police will, like, if you're a guy who's too attractive walking around the streets, like the morality police will come up to you and tell you to step away from those women or like cover your face or something. This actually is a thing that happens in Saudi Arabia.
No, it is.
That's
I-
awesome.
It makes sense.
We
You
need
see
more
how
of that,
well
for
they
sure.
assimilate
Makes
into the
sense.
rest of the world, don't you?
Let's go to Aiko.
Yeah, actually, traditionally Catholics have asked women to cover their hair in church. That's something that historically we've done. Don't really do it so much anymore, but if you go to Europe and you go to like traditional like older villages and stuff like that, you'll see it. All the women will have their hair covered. And we do have something. It's not exactly a burqa, but it's along the same lines. But I just wanted
modesty, though.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Corey because his answer I thought was really interesting about just follow the dress code. But really, when you're talking about dress codes, just like when you're talking about a lot of other things, you have deductive reasoning and then you have inductive reasoning, right? And I'm hoping that'll
Have no reasoning, by the way.
appeal. Yes, and no reasoning. But I'm hoping that will appeal to the scientist in you, right? Because when you're following a dress code, that's deductive reasoning. You're looking at a rule and then you're applying the rule in the situation. But then you also have inductive reasoning where you see something that you instinctively think is wrong, but you don't really have the logic trained to tell you why it's wrong yet. At that point, you have to use inductive reasoning to say, maybe this is something that needs to change in the dress code so that we can then apply the dress code to the situation. And then also universally we apply it to everybody else because that's the whole point of a dress code is that the rules apply equally to everybody. So if you see something like this and the dress code doesn't address it, can't you just imply inductive reasoning and say, okay, maybe we should look at the dress code again?
Yeah, so that's a totally valid question in terms of like if you want to reevaluate the dress code such that it applies equally to everyone and provided, I
Right.
guess, obviously it, meets whatever legal regulations and you're not doing anything illegal, then I have no potential issue with that. That's why it's like I don't have an issue with this currently. Like it seems like they're following the dress code.
Right. They're following the dress code, but I think the panel seems to be in agreement that maybe the dress code isn't sufficient in this case. It needs to be modified. So let me ask a second question because reading this, hearing everyone's sort of comments on this, it makes it sound like this person has had breast augmentation surgery or something like that. But reading the article, it seems to it says
Prosthetic.
that this is a prosthetic, right? So
Yeah,
it's not
We all
like.
recognize that.
It seems to me that it would be different if although I don't know entirely how much different, but it seems to make it much more easy call if it's just a prosthetic. Because now you're talking about somebody who wouldn't necessarily have to wear that into work, whereas you couldn't take it off if it was an implant, right? So doesn't that change things? That the fact that this is a prosthetic sort of makes me question why it's being weared to begin with, why it's being taken to the school specifically. Like, if she wants to go to the nightclubs like that, or do whatever she wants to do outside of the school classroom, that's one thing. But then to also wear it in school, I mean, to me, it's not just about the nipples. It's really about it's about the comical size of it as well. And I just don't understand why, if it's a prosthetic, why that doesn't also like weigh into things when it comes to the school district's policies.
So I would ask. I think there's a lot of contextual factors to take into account in terms of like. So, I can agree with you in the sense that maybe the fact that they're prosthetics might change things, but then I don't know how you design his dress code of like whatever, no clip-on breasts, and like how do you apply that? That just means that you can just like say that they're real, and like do you want teachers, or if they're going to be hired, that to check whether their breasts are like real or like semi-attached or semi-detached.
What do you say whether they're real or not? There is like a line at which it becomes too much. So I want to post something in the group chat, right? So this guy allegedly has the largest dick on the planet, right? Allegedly.
Oh, here we go.
Lies, because I'm here.
I outlined it for you guys, okay? So imagine this guy, we're at the high school, and he insisted on wearing very, very tight pants, like fucking like yoga pants or something, right? Like, even if it's real, right? I think like Scott said, hey, at some point it's too distracting, even if it's real, even if this is just your body, it's like you can't work here. Like I think that's fine. Like what's wrong with saying that?
What about
Work any work.
What about a person? Okay, there's two different directions. What about a person who has like elephantitis of the leg? Right, like I'm not gonna do the thing that you think I'm gonna do. But like seriously, just has a deformity, elephantitis of the leg. Would we say that person you can't be a teacher? Right?
You should be free to discriminate against anybody for any reason, period.
I'm not surprised that you would say that.
That's what liberty actually
Scott.
means.
But I'm the racist one. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised you would say that.
To answer the question, couldn't you just say, well, if you have something like that which is distracting, we could still hire you. But like you should make an effort to cover it up, as opposed to I think if you made an effort to like accentuate your elephantitis to the point where, like, let's say you wear spandex specifically around that portion of your leg, that might be kind of
wear
right?
a bra around your elephantitis leg. We already established that. We're going to do that. Okay.
Multiple bras.
Listen, I can tell you, schools make an effort to make accommodations whenever necessary. Some of those accommodations might be to say, yes, you can work here, but there's certain special requests that we're going to make in terms of the clothing that you wear.
What if we had? Let's flip this around a little bit. What if it was a student was naturally busty? I had.
Okay, I can tell. Okay, can I answer that?
Before you do?
Yeah.
I don't even let me just get out there.
Yeah.
In middle school, I knew this girl who was really hot, but was super naturally busty, right? Like just boom. She had these things, right? Like so. She, like it was an explosion every time. Leaks my pants. But when like if this person shows up, like they're just as distracting, right? Should we discriminate against this individual who just happens to have boob? Again, she's wearing a bra, so we can be done with that. She's wearing a bra, but should we discriminate against that? I also have Aiko, but I'm very curious about what you all have to say about that.
Yeah. Okay. So I for a couple of years everyone has like extra duties that they have to do in a school if they work there. And 1 year for 2 years in a row, mine was in school suspension. So every once in a while I would go in, sometimes I would do it for the whole day. People who were suspended, but were still in school, like, and always in the first period, the class would always fill up with girls, and I couldn't figure out why I was always getting girls first period. And it was because they would show up, somebody would decide that what they were wearing was inappropriate, so they were sent to in-school suspension until a parent could come and bring something else for them to wear. And a lot of times it was having jeans with too many holes in them. So it got me thinking, like, why are all these girls being sent in there with like holes in their jeans? And so I started like noticing more what people were wearing, and the boys had holes in their jeans just as much as the girls did throughout the school. But it was always the girls that got caught. It was also, interestingly, always almost always women teachers who were the ones busting them and sending them to ISS. I don't know what's going on with that, but I started asking around, and so I asked my debate team about this. So they started doing stuff, and we started writing cases about the fact that even though dress codes are written in gender neutral ways, they don't get applied in gender neutral ways. And so it turned out that this isn't just a problem that was in my school, because I was just noticing it in my school, but it's a problem that was happening nationally. So we started pulling some of that evidence, started running some debate cases at tournaments to see, if it was a case that could win or not. But the point is, yeah, this is like a real thing. Like you're starting, they're having to, like in the district where I was working, we started having to rework the dress code so that it wouldn't get applied less evenly. And absolutely, like if somebody was busty, also they would more likely get brought in. It was especially
Busted
true.
because they're busty. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
I looked up the dress
It's a
code
good
for
one.
this specific school earlier, right? And
Yeah.
and their policy on this is no exposed or visible nipples, right? Or sex organs or whatever the fuck the word is. Right. So as long as the nipples aren't visible, it's fine. But it seems that that standard isn't applying to the teacher for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, yeah, what
yeah,
does
they're
visible mean
probably
in
They're
this case?
terrified
Right?
of TRAs. Like that's really all it is.
So have you
People are
seen
fucking
where?
terrified of trans rights activists.
But again,
there's
this would still be
specific laws in
ridiculous even if
Canada.
you couldn't
No.
see the outlines of the nipples, right? It
There's
would still be
specific
kind of
law in
ridiculous.
Canada that I think they cited in their response, and I have to read this response again to get the specific. In fact, before I spout on, I'm going to read the specific law again and just let you
Okay,
know.
Prime
Scott.
to answer the to
Oh,
answer
To
your-
iCal's
Lactoid.
point,
Sorry. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah,
yeah.
Waterkai.
Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead.
Waterkai,
To
if you haven't
iCal's
talked,
point,
so I'm going to go there, and then Lactoid, and then Scott.
so I'm agreeing a lot with what iCal's saying because a lot of male students in protest for what's happening to the female students started wearing what the females were wearing to see if they gained the same infractions, and they weren't getting punished at the same level that female students were. So it's a discrimination, and it's actually hurting the education of female students.
Okay, let's go to Lactoid. I would love if someone answers this question.
Yeah, I'll answer the question. I think the standard for the students should be lower. I think the main reason is because as a student, you're mandated by law to attend this institution, and you're also not in a position of power, right? You are the student. You're a kid. And then there should still be rules. There should still be dress codes on you, maybe. But I'd probably be more relaxed in terms of like weird situations like this than I would with a teacher who is a hired employee in a position of power. We can have more expectations on them than we can.
But the effects
who
are still the
forcing it.
same.
Yeah, the effects may still be the same, but one, I think we have more justification in controlling than the other. I also want to, I don't know how far I want to go with this line of thinking, but I think I take the position that there may be some justification to have slightly different standards when it comes to dress code between men and women. In that, for a number of reasons, but like breasts are simply sexualized at a greater rate among women than they are among men. And not only does this apply in like dress codes, but it also applies in ways that we would all agree with, right? So if if at a high school, like a bunch of boys are like roughhousing or whatever, and like punch each other in the nipples or like slap their nipples or whatever, like titty twisters, I got those all the fucking time, right? That's one thing. But if that happened to a girl, the police would get involved, right? And it would be called sexual assault, Me Too, like it'd be a huge scandal, right? So if you're going to have that standard of protection for breasts, it also makes sense that we have different dress codes for women who have breasts than we have dress codes for men. That's just, I think it makes sense, doesn't it?
I don't know how your lot.
Oh,
Go ahead,
but
Ika.
they
No,
have to be
because
written
dudes-
that way. They have
because
to be written
men,
that way. Like, for instance, if you have, shirts versus skins at gym class or whatever for boys, like that's totally fine, and you wouldn't do that with girls for obvious reasons. But then you need to write that into the dress code so that you're making that differentiation made clear. I'm talking about a dress code that doesn't differentiate, but then is applied in different ways.
Yeah,
And
it
that's
should
the
be
problem.
different. It should be.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It should always, everything should be written down. I 100% agree. I just think that the dress codes should be written differently for women.
I agree.
Scott. Should we be
Yeah, I mean,
able-
I'm pretty much of the same thing, but right, because like so long as you have state-based education, where children are legally required to go to public schools, you know, and I think that's really kind of the real cause of the issue here. You know, if you wanted to correct this situation, you would get rid of public education as a state-funded resource and allow parents and people to be able to engage in the market.
Can we
And
assume
then
that
and then
that's
in
gonna
under
be
that.
around? Yeah.
Yeah, but under that system, I would say, yeah, you should be able to discriminate against anybody for any reason, including, you know, if you don't want a girl at your private school that has like, you know, gargantuan breasts because, you know, you really pride your institution on not having those distractions and a quality education, then you should be able to say like, yeah, I'm turning you away. You should be selective in the way that you're able to do business and associate with other people.
And it's the same thing with disabled people, right? I mean, disabled people
Yes.
able to.
Yes,
Okay. Well,
absolutely.
that's
Yeah,
good to.
so-
So this like contextualize everything that Scott says on this subject. Okay. All right. So literally, even
Yeah, no, I
disabled
mean, like
kids
you can
don't deserve an
You
education.
can kind of dismissively. No, that's not what I said.
Oh no, but you
attempt-
It
can.
sounds like-
Sorry, you can deny
no,
them an
no.
education.
No, listen to me. You can attempt to like get emotional with it and dismiss.
I'm not
the
getting
logic of
emotional.
What
I'm
saying.
I'm laughing
Right, well,
at
you're
your terrible.
you're straw manning the position.
Okay.
So if you're not emotional, it means you're being disingenuous, and I was giving you the benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
But no, I never said in any way, shape, or form that people don't deserve an education. What I'm saying is they don't deserve positive rights from other people. You don't get to enslave other people and call
Enslaved.
yourself moral by requiring that they do what you want them to do.
Disability.
Prime.
All
A
you have to do
disability
is not aggress upon.
is
Prime.
enslaving the other rest of people around you. Go ahead, fanatic, please.
That's
It
a
makes-
completely
it makes-
straw man lie that you're
it-
saying right now.
it
Like, I
makes-
never said
it-
that
yeah.
a disability, the existence of a disability is an enslavement of other people. What
Yeah.
I'm saying is an enslavement of other people is you saying that you don't have the freedom to associate or do your business the way that you want with the people that you choose to do. And
Sure, yeah.
instead, the government comes in and forces, with ultimately threat of violence, but sanctions or tax or
This is
some form of
a
taxation.
white person with
etc.
deep privilege who doesn't understand what slavery is. Thank you
Yeah,
so
of
much.
course not.
Go ahead, fanatic.
And I think the
Straw
problem
man
is
after
you
straw
can't
man.
Fanatic. Fanatic.
you can't engage with him, right? This is one of the main reasons why it's so hard to engage with him is because 9 times out of 10 he's not answering your
Because I'm
question.
principled.
9 times out of 10 he's not answering your question. He's just trying to find a way of pivoting into his libertarian stances, right? So like if you ask him, do you think that the government should regulate like against people dumping oil into against corporations dumping oil into these people's backyard? Is that a moral wrong thing to do? Instead of answering that question, he'll just say things like, well, when you have the government being responsible for doing regulations, then you have these companies like that are doing these things, and then the government is supposed to and he'll try to find a way of saying something about how the government shouldn't be involved at all, and instead the citizen, and like in every conversation it's just how do I pivot back to that it's not a genuine conversation. It's so
almost like I
disgusting.
actually believe what I say. And my
Yeah.
answer to that question that you attempted to give for me would be that no, the government shouldn't be regulating those things. And also the government shouldn't be affording protections to these companies like oil companies so that they're immune to lawsuits and that they're actually protecting these companies by being the ones that supposedly regulate them.
Look,
Sure,
you don't even
It's
have to
almost like
ask him
I'm
a question.
fucking principled.
You don't even have to ask him a question. You could just come up with a hypothetical and he'll still do it. Go ahead, Prime.
Yeah. So I fanatic. Then I want to hear from you. I think DB, you might have raised your hand previously. I think one of you did. And I skipped over you, but I whichever one of you did, I do want to get to you. Fanatic.
Sure.
Though. Yeah. Could you answer that question in terms of the student?
Well, I'm sorry. What would if the student was incredibly busty and so on and so forth, and it was
Yeah.
like literally something outside of their control? No, I don't think you'd be able to turn away that student for sure.
Okay, sure. But
And the reason being is because one, again, like you can't deny people an education, and if it's something that's literally happening outside of that person's control, one, there's already the compulsion that the person has to go to school, and two, you could be like again really harmfully discriminating against a person that's not doing anything of their own volition, and so that's obviously a problematic thing, right? So I would say no, you have no right
sure.
to do that.
What about employment then?
employment is obviously different. One, employment is voluntary. Two, like since this is a state sanctioned thing in which we're saying we're going to be providing this thing for all the students and so on and so forth, then if you are in a position where you decide like you're going to be doing things that are going to be harmful towards that process, then as the state you're neglecting, right? Because your job is to make sure that you're providing the best education opportunity for the students.
Let's move away from the school just for a second, okay? So
Okay.
Scott had earlier said that a woman who is like naturally very curvy, right? Who's wearing professional office clothing, that on her that her clothing might still be a problem, even though she's dressed like to the T in terms of office decorum, right? That her body just is what it is, right? Because of that,
really stupid.
you should be able to discriminate against them and not hire them. What are your thoughts on that specifically?
Well, yeah, it's a really stupid thing to say, and for the the primary reason is that, like, if you really think about it, like, if unless you can tell me some sort of functional way that this is going to be harmful to their job, it doesn't make sense. Obviously, when you start talking about children, you don't expect children to have the decency and the ability that the adults do in regulating themselves and saying, hey, like, this is just a person. I'm not going to dehumanize this person. I'm not going to do these kind of things, right? Like, you don't expect adults to be, I mean, you expect adults to be able to do that. You don't expect children to be able to say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and talk myself out of my hormones raging because I'm seeing erect nipples, right? Like, they're kids and they don't have the same like development in the brain. So that's why there's going to obviously be a difference.
Nipples covered up though, to be clear.
Yeah,
Can I respond to that real quick?
yeah. Well, I mean, just regardless, I think you're going to obviously see a difference between the way that children and adults have it. So that's when you talk about a job versus a school, these things are widely different.
I just want to say real quick that all transactions should be voluntary, and if they're not voluntary and they're coerced by another power, that is inherently aggressive and violent towards those people's freedoms and liberty, and is a morally unjustifiable position, and is, for the record, a form of enslavement when you use violence and coercion to modulate and control the behavior of other people when they are not actually doing anything aggressive towards another human being.
Gotcha. So let's try Doobie. Doobie, what do you think about the example I gave in terms of the student? The student who is naturally ultra busty and wearing a bra. Should they be allowed to, or should the school be allowed to discriminate against them?
No, of course not.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, again, the school's policy is pretty clear. I think it makes sense. So as long as it's not exposed or visible, you're fine. And I think if you're wearing a bra, your nipples aren't visible typically. So yeah, I think you're good.
And you would say the same thing about a teacher who just happens to be naturally busty. Okay. Doobie.
Yeah, of course.
At least he has some sense there. Thank you so much, Doobie. Okay, so
what's your argument against that? But what's your you're dismissive of people that disagree with you, and that's fine. Like, I get it, it's your show, but like, what's your argument against someone that is incredibly curvy and incredibly beautiful, right? That is teaching a classroom, right? To, let's say, 9th grade. I think 9th grade's a great example, right?
Sure.
And like, the parents are going to the school and being like, my son, who's usually really good at math, isn't getting anything done, and all the boys in class are like passing notes and they're not paying attention.
Bad parents.
Because this teacher is
bad parents.
This teacher, that's not bad parents. It's fucking hormones. Like, if you put
a
solid 10,
you can teach children, how to, emotionally regulate and deal with their feelings.
Corey, PhD candidate over here, you're being fucking anti-science.
It's crazy to emotionally regulate yourself.
Idea.
Teach a 14-year-old to not be a fucking. What are you talking about?
Like, and I already said, like, it's perfectly reasonable to take said teacher and be like, look, maybe you shouldn't be in charge of like 9th grade. Like, maybe you should be working in middle school or elementary school or in like senior year where people have like some more control. But it's working. It's literally working against the students' education.
So if it was a handsome man, like, whatever.
Yes,
you would say,
I would agree.
Yeah. As like,
Same
Like if
concept.
there's like if there's and it's usually a U.S. history teacher, right? Let's just be honest, right? If there's a fucking U.S. history teacher dude that's like fucking super fucking giga chad that shows up into class every day in a suit, and all the girls are passing notes and not getting shit done and not
You
paying
what?
attention,
It's
it's
usually
like,
the
hey,
once again,
maybe we should fucking like put you
Do
in
the
middle school
Saudi
or
Arabia
elementary
thing.
school.
Yeah, I get it.
What's your argument against that?
No, I will
Or
argue
need an
against it.
argument.
Sure.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. And I left other people to jump in on this as well. My argument is the same as my argument against any sort of discrimination for something that is beyond a person's control. So there are other people's reaction to your appearance, right? Is not again, assuming it's within the bounds of a dress code here, right? That is not your fault. What this logic train leads to, is that men can't control themselves, and then rape is a woman's fault. So
Thank you.
How do we get here?
What I've been
hold
trying
on.
to say this whole time.
Yeah, let me take you there, right? Scott's saying that within the context of that classroom, that these boys can't control themselves, right? And then you can't teach them. Like Corey said, yeah, why don't you do better parenting? Like you are fucking up in class, kid, right? I don't care what the fuck your teacher is like you need to be focusing on your work. And this is the same mindset where it comes to, hey, what she was wearing, right? See, that's a problem, right? Well, of course she got sexually assaulted, right? Now, I don't support sexual assault, certainly not, right? But if you go around town dressed like that, well, I mean, gonna happen. And that line of thinking leads to the burqa. I mean, we've already seen Scott literally line up with the Saudi Arabia regime, right? Our friend Lactoid's telling us that men who are too beautiful are told to move away from a group of women, right? Like Scott signed on to that. Oh, if this guy is too cute, this history teacher is. You said that if the history teacher is too cute and he's a distraction, then maybe he shouldn't have that job. Did I get that part wrong?
Maybe he shouldn't have that job isn't the words that I use, but sure, close enough.
Yeah, not that ninth grade teacher, right? That's right. That would be a problem. It would be ninth grade we were talking about. Okay, yeah. So it's the same thing that these individuals, these children, cannot control themselves. It is not a thing that they are capable. That is silly to think that we could tell. Like if they're the same thing, if there is a girl that is busty, right, in the classroom, then I wouldn't say give my kid all this excuse. Well, this kid's too busty, right? As a parent, I'm not gonna fucking show up and like protest this girl existing because she's too busty, and my kid's got a fucking erection, and he can't, and he's got the sex craze on his mind. Sorry, that's his problem, and that's my problem for not parenting him correctly. That's my argument against it.
Let me explain why you're not
there.
representing my logic in any way, shape, or form. Right. So my logic is that you shouldn't be coerced from voluntary association, and that if an individual if someone owns a school, right? So someone has the right to hire and fire and put people in the positions that are the best towards them, right? They should have the freedom to be able to say that, this person would be better suited in a different position, or that they're not a right fit for whatever fucking reason, number one. Number two, the idea that you are saying that 14-year-old boys can be distracted from their education by incredibly gorgeous women, or 14-year-old girls, or of course, LGBT community and all of that, right? Like boys distracted by the boy, doesn't fucking matter. The idea that someone that is at that age with raging hormones, that you're just a bad parent, or you're encouraging bad behavior if we just recognize reality. Do you know what that is? That is the insanity of your philosophy overriding reality. because the
No,
reality of the world is the reality of the world is that super hormonal teenagers can be distracted by exceedingly
can,
beautiful
yeah.
people,
So
and that there are, and if I so choose as an employer to put someone there that is less distracting because I want better educational outcomes for those people, that there's nothing wrong with that.
people can be distracted by anything. No, I don't think anyone would say that a teenager, regardless of gender or sex, is never distracted. It's whether if you're making the argument or like you outline the case of like, oh yeah, my boy just can't learn math in this classroom because of what they're surrounded by. That's you being a bad parent. I think you demonstrate.
You guys are being retarded. Listen, it's not about being a bad parent.
Absolutely, 100%.
What you do instead, you don't sit there and look at an individual case. What you do is instead you say, this seems like something that would likely be a deterrent for most young people, given this kind of a circumstance, and so then therefore this is why we should react differently. In the same sense, when it comes to things like driving, right, where it's like, hey, we're not going to say no, you're just a bad parent for letting your kid make reckless decisions. We say, given the developmental age, given the developed brain at this stage, this is a likely outcome. And because it is likely, then we should probably take steps to circumvent such things. That's what they're talking about. That's what everyone with a working brain would do. Like, I don't know why you're arguing against it.
Yeah, so what is the most optimal sort of design of a school would pretty much like we just all of the heterosexual people like should be segregated.
Nope, you're gonna go to
like
some crazy extreme slippery slope retardation. Just deal with what we're talking about.
So I try to in terms of like, yeah, if your child is too distracted by what its surroundings are, like you have almost certainly raised that child incorrectly, or has some sort of developmental disability.
I already debunked that.
Okay,
like,
three.
Lactoid.
Yeah. I just have three quick points. Okay, so I'm noticing a hypocrisy here. In one of our prior discussions, and I'm pretty sure you were actually on that, Corey, we were talking about protecting children, and when it came to software used to protect children from certain websites, and the argument here was never coming from people. Well, no, it's the parents' responsibility. We have no responsibility to protect children. We have no responsibility to care for children. It's if this happens, it means you're a bad parent. Same thing with like the drug overdose thing. No, we all have a responsibility to protect children, and I am also flabbergasted that you guys are forgetting about all the children who don't have good parents, right? Who don't have parents at all, right? Who are forced into public education where they don't have an upbringing, and now like this is a situation in which they're obviously going to have difficulty focusing. And you can say, well, it's because their parents are bad. Sure. Does that help them get an education? Does that help them to get a degree? It doesn't,
Absolutely.
right? The other thing here, when it comes to the teacher as opposed to other students, they're the instructor, right? The focus is on them. They are the adult. They are the controlling the classroom. We can control them to more of an extent than we can the kids in the same way we can when it comes to prayer in schools. Kids can pray if they want to, but legally, we have an issue when it comes to teachers leading kids in prayer, right? Or teachers sitting up at the desk and praying in front of the kids. Why? Because obviously we recognize teachers hold a different position of power and a different place in the classroom than students do. The last point I have here is, we're going down slippery slopes. We can also go down a slippery slope the opposite way. There's plenty of examples of things that are highly distracting. Let's say there was a teacher who smelled horrible, and every time they came into class, they reeked so bad that no one could focus. Are we really going to say, well, we should just teach the kids to get over the smell? Or can we say, like, at some point, like, I'm sorry you can't control, like, how, like, you're setting off the fire alarms and shit, like, it's just so bad, we can't have you here, right? There does come a point, like, if we want to go down the slippery slope the other way, in which we recognize there are distractions for kids that, we can try to help, but perhaps to the super extremes, we can't help. I don't understand why, like, everyone's dumping on Scott for saying that. I think that's a somewhat reasonable position, right? If something is so crazy out there, at some point, if it's distracting and destroying the learning environment, we owe it to we're spending money to teach these kids. Why would we ruin their future? To make somebody like some teacher happy? Is that it?
I can attempt to pick and choose who gets to have some sort of future, who gets to have education, who gets to have anything, employment based on these rules. You're going to have a bunch of people living in trailers. I don't understand it.
Yeah, so I can attempt to address some of the points that you made, Lactoid. I don't know if I can remember them all, but specifically about the point in terms of like, yeah, I totally agree with you. If not, I have no problem saying that. Probably the vast majority of children don't have like the best parents, or like, you know, maybe I would almost make the argument of the large majority of parents are pretty awful. But at the same time, I think there are other ways to address that instead of like punishing the teacher. As in, like, if a child has difficulties focusing in class, like, you can provide resources and support for that child. Guidance counselors and other forms of counseling exist for a reason, where you can, you know, if they are not receiving the appropriate, you know, social emotional regulation from their parents, you can get that through other means, through other support systems, and you don't have to like remove a teacher, or like, you know, transport a child from like one classroom to another to like the teacher that they're not attracted to or whatever. There are other ways of addressing that. That addresses your point.
You have a teacher with a classroom of, let's say, 30 people that are all children. And for some reason, you want to die on this hill that, like, how dare we discriminate against the teacher and just move them to an elementary school? And in lieu of that, you want to use guidance counselors and
I didn't say,
like
I
the
said
entire
another
school
counselor.
system, right? Like to try and fix these 14-year-old boys that are distracted by the super hot teacher. That is, like, even from a consequentialist perspective, even from your leftist framework, the amount of money and time and care and like difficulty is so much more in one direction than the other that this is just a silly argument at this point.
No. So if you want to address that, Prime, but I can engage with that. Like,
go ahead.
So in terms of the scenario that you outlined, of like, yeah, if a child is struggling, and you're saying like this is a disproportionate allocation of resources, I would say if a child is struggling, they should receive a disproportionate allocation of resource, or like whatever appropriate one, because that speaks to a larger issue. I think it's fair to say.
The problem isn't an individual child. The problem is that we're saying children likely are going to have this experience, not just an individual child. That's the thing. Whenever we start talking about like making redressing things or like adjusting things because like there's like some sort of normative outcome that we're like associating something with, then in those cases is where you can say, hey, yeah, maybe we should do things a little bit differently. Maybe because of the fact it would be if you would say, if this is an outlier situation where you have one child who is expected to be pretty perform poorly, then you can say, no, you just need to adjust your kid. But when we can say this is something that most kids, given the circumstance, would probably react in this way, that's when you start saying, nah, maybe you need to adjust that teacher. That's the difference.
Yeah, I just don't know how to turn that into a prescription. Like, we go back to the scenario. Like, it seems like the best sort of design of a school system is like all girls who are heterosexual and all boys who are heterosexual.
The best design for the school system is what we have right now. And when you have these outlier retard situations, you just address them, right? Like, you don't have to go ahead and redesign the entire school system because the entire school system functions. We're identifying a problem, and rather than admit, hey, what our solution is to this problem works, you would rather say, no, let's just redesign the entire thing from the very ground up. You don't have to do that. We don't have to be retarded. We can use our brains.
No, I think Corey is saying that the issue that it works as it is now. It's functioning now. Just wait, at least in the cases, Canadian case, he's saying it's actually functioning, and there doesn't.
But it's not functioning. That's what we're all identifying. That's the whole point of the conversation.
We haven't distilled the problem, though. What is the problem?
The problem
so I think so. Hold on. I want to address lactoid. I don't lactoid. I think you made a really interesting point previously. I think that our first instinct should always be that we don't discriminate. That as long as someone can functionally do a job, right? If you can't functionally do it, that's a problem. But if you can functionally accomplish the business mission, then that should be okay. I think it's a disgusting thought that a person can literally be too fucking pretty, or on the other hand, too ugly to be employed there, right?
What about smelly?
No, and that was your good point. So I'm gonna get back to that. But yeah, I think that's like what world are we living in when that is the outcome they want, the prescription that we want, where a person just happens to be, that someone decides this is too physically distracting. Like, how do we even fucking measure that? Right? How do we measure that a person's too attractive, and then how do we measure the effects? Right? It could be that one kid. It could be that one kid is really having trouble concentrating, right? And the rest of the class manages it, right? They got erections, it's true, but they manage it and they get their work done. But then, or it could be that maybe there's more, or maybe there's less. I don't know. Or maybe none of the kids have a problem, and it really is just the parents. It's the wives, right, who show up at parent-teacher conference and say that this person is too attractive. Their bodies are too curvy, too sinful. One of them is going to fucking say that. And that's the issue. At that point, like, that's not a world I want to live in, where that's the standard, or we don't really define the standard. It's just anything, I guess, right? Anyone who just
you're proving my point.
Scott. I'll deal with you later.
Sorry, I wait until you finish an argument, but then you make.
Yeah, shut up. I'm sorry, Scott. Shut the fuck up. Yeah, I'm talking. Yeah, I'm making my argument, and yeah, I'll take as much time as I fucking want to. Scott, you do that fucking all the time. Leave me the fuck alone.
Just
shut up.
A good point.
Whoa. Shut the fuck up. All right. If you need me to assist you, I can assist you, but shut the fuck up. I'm talking. Thank you. All right, don't worry, I'll help you. So okay. So that's not the world that I want to create. And it's a world where when it comes to black girls and black women, they're the ones going to be punished more. So I think it was Aiko who brought up talking about like the differences in kids, right? Like who are hit with these like demerits or suspensions or whatever the fuck, right? For dress code violations, that happens more to women of color, to girls of color. Those individuals are the ones who are told that they are the problem, that that they've showed up and they've done something wrong just because their bodies. Hell, like they don't even like their fucking hair, right? Like that's why I have to have the fucking Crown Act because of their hair, and we'll have hair discrimination. So yes, body discrimination is a thing that happens to girls of color. So that's not something I want. However, you made a really good point on smell, right? And I don't know how to exactly deal with that. There could be a person who has like it's not a hygiene issue. They're taking showers, right? But they have like a hyperactive sweat glands, and we can imagine a scenario where it's just so bad that it's distracting. I don't know how to deal with that. I'm gonna have to put some serious thought into it. I literally don't know how to deal with that one. But I think it's a really good point. And that I think it's fair to say that could be a distraction. And maybe they functionally can't. I don't know. I have to put some more thought into it. But thank you so much for that.
Right, because there's other. It's unfortunate, but it is true that your immutable characteristics can influence how you can do a job. Like the smell example, that could be distracting in a classroom. That could also be distracting if you're a salesperson. If you're out on the floor selling to people, you might have a very difficult time selling to people if you have halitosis, right? If you're every time you try to talk to them, they want to walk away because it's like, holy shit. And it's also true that if you're really ugly, you're not going to be a very successful salesperson. And I think it'd be ridiculous to insist that a company who's in the business of sales, who needs to meet their bottom line, to say, well, like, you have to hire this ugly person because they can't control that they're ugly, or like you have to hire this ugly stripper because they can't control that they're ugly, and now you're going to lose money, right? Because in the private sector, it's money, but in the public sector, we're talking about like a child's education. We're talking about their future success, and so you're not compromising the bottom line when you introduce a distraction-full environment to them. You're affecting their very futures. That's something that obviously needs to be like weighed. I'm not saying like in every scenario, just completely overpowers a teacher's, self-expression, but that definitely needs to be strongly weighed against what a teacher can do in or outside, not even outside, just in the classroom, right?
In college, I had a IT teacher. He taught database stuff. He taught databases, and he had a very strong accent. He was an Asian gentleman, had an extremely strong accent, and it was fucking hilarious. Like he would say things with an accent, and it would be funny. Like he would like say like sets, right, and it sounds like he's saying sex all the time. Other things like that sounded like super lewd, and I just literally, like from the beginning of this course to end of this course, could not stop snickering. Right? And I had to fucking deal with that. I had to get over it. If this had been, now that you could say, well, I'm a college age kid, you should be able to handle that. Well, if this had been in high school, I'd had even tougher time doing that, right?
I don't think you should have had.
Prime,
It
hey,
was not-
I got you. That's a very personal thing, and I can totally understand where you're going with this. But let me ask you a question: what if it was so bad and so common and so whatever that literally every kid was dealing with it in the same way? It turned out that every kid was snickering like that, and so all the kids were struggling and their grades were being impacted. At that point, would you say that maybe that this person wouldn't be fit for this job?
So here's the thing. As far as I know, at least among my friends that went there, like who took that same class with me, they were all snickering. All of them. I remember we were just fucking laugh the entire time. But like we had to get over it. In that case, I say it's incumbent upon the kid. Now my teacher was perfectly not legible, but the opposite of that, like intelligible.
Illegible.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, yeah,
legible is likely the right word.
yeah.
Intelligible.
Intelligible. Yeah, legible would be wrong writing.
Sorry, Corey. I didn't mean the opposite. I meant for voice. Okay. Intelligible. So this person was intelligible, so I could understand his words. Right. Sometimes it took a little bit of deciphering, because of his strong accent, but I could understand his words. But I literally just had to overcome it, and I did because I did really well in that class.
What if you couldn't understand his words to the point where it was like you could understand some of the words, but you couldn't understand probably half of what this person was saying, and so it led to you having bad grades in the same way you had bad grades because you guys were laughing the whole time.
That sounds like a functional thing to me, and I'm going to admit before anyone you said that like the line here is very gray, I think, but like in terms of functionality, yeah, I think that if the person literally has people have trouble hearing them or understanding their words, then as a teacher, and that's an issue when you're spending all your time talking. But
even though you can't control that, right?
Even though you can't control it. Yeah. So I'll admit that there's some overlap there, and I don't know how to draw that hard line here. So that's something we're gonna have to put some thought into.
But Prime, at the very least, in the example that you brought before us, this is a way less sympathetic situation where you have somebody who's trying to learn the language and they just can't, or maybe they have like a hyperactive like body odor and they just can't get rid of it. This is somebody who puts in prosthetics and comes to a classroom full of high schoolers. This person could just simply take the prosthetics out. It's more comparable to somebody who smells bad because they just don't shower. Like you could just shower and then you'd be fine, right? I don't understand why we don't even have to get into the problem of immutable characteristics, even though we spent a lot of time talking about that. In this, you can just take them out. You can just take them out and come to class.
So I mean, yeah, I hear you, but I think Corey was trying to address this. Like, how do we institutionalize that? There's a word I'm looking for here. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, implement it, like in
practice.
Codify it. We can put it in the codes.
Codify, yeah.
It's pretty simple.
But like, and I'll say this, and Scott, I'd like to hear what you have to say after that. But how do we codify that when? Okay, this is an obvious case where this person like apparently was in one state before and then showed up in a separate state. You can tell this is obviously a change. But if they started work this way, right? And let's say they were a trans individual, but like they just they passed, right? So you had no idea one way or the other. It's like, okay, you've got these very large breasts or something that appear to be breasts, right? You could just take them out, but I don't know. The person looks cis to me. How do we handle this? Like, do women with large breasts have to come with a certificate from the doctors saying these are my natural breasts?
The female body inspector.
I don't know how you even codify that.
No, you don't have to codify it. You simply say look, you come to the interview or whatever, and if it's going to be a problem, you say you have to wear a cover-up bra or something, like this is going to be distracting. And if they say, well, I'm already wearing 5, this is how it looks like with 5 on. If I take them all off, it'll fill up this entire room and spill over onto all the desks, and you're not going to have any room to write.
Then I would agree it's a distraction.
Yeah. So but this person at that point, I'm sorry. In the same way that someone with halitosis probably shouldn't be a salesperson. Somebody, this is going to sound kind of mean, but somebody who with perhaps some verbal disorders might have some issues being an attorney. This probably is just not the job for this person. If you're not a good fit in a job, that doesn't mean that you're a loser. It just means that perhaps you have to get a different job. And there's plenty of, I mean, I'm sorry, don't sound crass, but there are plenty of jobs this person could probably get.
Scott.
So what we're describing is the problems that occur from centrally planning monopolistic behavior of the state. That's what you're seeing, right? So you even yourself showed the problem when you said, well, maybe some kids need extra work, right? But like the rest of the kids have a boner, or like everybody's giggling. And what you're doing is you're using a false myth of equality, that like this equality exists between the competence and the fit of teachers, and therefore it's wrong to discriminate. The fact of the matter is some people are great teachers and some people are poor teachers. And so what ends up happening is you actually push down the education of everybody by attempting to centrally plan all of these systems within education. And so this is like in the Road to Serfdom, like Hayek, right? What you're doing is you're using the state to attempt to research what it is that the market needs. And the problem is that the more you research, right, the more you spend attempting to find a price demand equation that the market simply does. The market does the price demand equation without need for intervention and from regulation from those that purchase and those that don't. And so like you're using this myth and you're pushing everyone down. And then what ends up occurring as you centrally plan is there are outliers and there are issues and there are loopholes and all of these things. But if you were free to simply engage in the market in a meaningful way, you wouldn't have these problems because this person would just get fired or they would get moved somewhere where they're not a problem.
Hey, but Corey, you said something that I think was really intelligent and I think it could be really, really addressed. Peep this out. So you said earlier, you said that yes, but like once he like laid out everything like that, like, hey, here's the thing, this is a difficulty, blah, 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 blah. You said it would be a distraction. And I think then this is where the point comes on. Like you at least admitted that part. If something is distracting to a large, to the majority of students, do you think it would be incumbent on the school to ensure that that thing is not present in the school?
Okay, well, so I was responding to if I understood the scenario that he outlined in terms of like as them removing their bras, like the students were like almost like physically displaced from the classroom, basically.
No, not physically displaced. He just said that they were all over the place, right? Like they're
no. Well, let's let Lactoid clarify his example.
Yeah.
Okay. No. Screw that. We don't got to go into that. If something is, we don't have to go into any specifics. Then let's just leave it general. If something is going to be distracting to the vast majority of students, do you think it is incumbent on that school to remove such things so that the students can get a fair education?
Yeah. So I'm not fully agreeing or disagreeing. So Lactoid did bring up a great example of like if someone's body odor that they can't control is distracting, and let's say there's actual like a large proportion of the students in the class are complaining to either them or the authorities saying, hey, yeah, like there's just like whatever, just smells really bad. Then I can be on board in terms of like, yeah, probably something has to be done. I don't know what that would be if that involves potentially changing the teacher or like that teacher just is not suited because like, yeah.
Okay. Then bringing the subject back, do you think that this person wearing these prosthetic titties with these obvious nipples, do you think that it's realistic to say that that would be distracting to most students?
Not inherently, no. That's where it gets.
Then what do you think is the reason for all of these pictures and all of the hoopla and all of them posting to their social media, all the pictures from the students themselves while in class taking pictures of the titties? Why do you think that is if they weren't distracted by the titties?
Well, no. So is this multiple students or is this one or a couple of
multiple?
Photos?
There were multiple students from multiple people. They all said that.
This could just be something I don't actually know in terms of like, is it something that viral or like, a bunch of students in the class?
A bunch of students took pictures.
And also at the same time, just because students took pictures, that doesn't make it inherently distracting. Students take like, as in like.
Why do you think? Why do you? That I already asked the question. Then, if it's not distracting, why were those students taking pictures of them? Then
I agree with you. Phones are distracting in class.
Okay, that's not what I'm asking. Again, the phone is the device used to take the pictures. I'm not going to let you do. I'm not going to let you be dishonest and weasel out of it. Why are the kids taking photos of the picture? Of the titties, if the titties aren't distracting?
Okay, so to go back to Lactoid's example of
No, I'm not asking about Lactoid's example. I asked you a very specific. I asked you a very specific question. Why are the kids taking pictures of the titties if the titties aren't distracting?
So I said in the example that if there are students complaining,
Okay, so you're not gonna answer my question? Answer my question. Why are the students taking pictures of the titties if the titties aren't distracting?
So is your argument that everything that a student takes a picture of is distracting?
All right, yeah. So he's not going to honestly engage anymore. Never mind.
Okay. Let's go to Aiko.
Freaking retarded.
Yeah,
This is why
so
these conversations are so pointless. Everyone gets dishonest, and this is ridiculous. Literally, everyone here understood the question as I asked it. We saw he tried to weasel multiple times till he finally gets pinned, and then he just starts trying to like do everything he can. Well, let's go back to Lactoid's example. Well, let's talk about phones being distracting. Well, let's talk about everything but answer the freaking question. You're a dishonest cucklord. I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Okay. Aiko. Not a cucklord, right?
Listen, I just wanted to say that there's an easy. Sometimes when these issues come up, one of the things that school boards try to do is they try to go around the question and answer the question in other ways. I'm not talking about this specific example because I think most of the panel agrees that that's a problem. But then when the other questions came up about, well, what if somebody's just simply too beautiful because they're distracting in that way or something like that? And the problem here is that is easily gotten around simply by looking at performance. So what we can do is we can look at the performance of teachers and we can see, oh, this one teacher their students have really low performance, really low test grades, they're not doing as well as other people in the department. And you can say, okay, well, if it's because the teacher's too beautiful, we pull out the teacher for that. Or you can just say, because those students are not performing well, then we're going to have to, put this teacher somewhere else where they might be more successful, or let that teacher go without even having to know that it was her beauty that caused the problem. So that sort of avoids the question altogether and still gets you to the result that you need, which is to say teachers that are low performing in terms of what they can do with the students get pulled out of the classroom. If it's true that's causing low performance.
That's you trying to avoid discrimination and then just firing someone who is a good teacher because they're just in the wrong place. Like you're trying to deny reality and not look at it because you're afraid to just say, yeah, this teacher's incredibly attractive and probably shouldn't be.
Wait a minute, hold on.
Put him in a 12th grade
Sorry,
class.
I was just about to wrap this up, but now I got to ask this, right?
Good teacher.
Aiko literally addressed this, right? Like, from my understanding, that what Aiko's answer he just gave should have answered everything, right? Should have addressed all your points.
No.
So the point is that, like you're saying, that this the person is a distraction, and that distraction is having a deleterious effect on the student's performance. But Aiko says, well, okay, well, we look at it from the other direction. If we see a classroom that is low performing, right, because of this massive distraction that you guys have all pointed out, spent all this time talking about, right? If you have this distraction and it shows within the grades, this teacher, for whatever reason, because of their accent, because of their breasts, because they smell, because they aren't good at getting their points across, right? For whatever reason that their class is low performing, then we take action, either moving them to a different classroom or letting them go. How is that not like the perfect response along your logic?
Well, I just explained it, but I'll explain it again, because when you're doing it blind of the reasoning, right? And instead you're just using this fucking measuring central plan metric of teacher performance instead of actually looking at what's going on, what's going to end up happen is you're going to lose good teachers that are potentially just in the wrong classroom.
He already said that. Moving to another classroom.
Oh my God, you didn't listen to what he said then, because he specifically said that you wouldn't even need to know what it was because you would just look at performance metrics and potentially fire them in that case. And what I'm saying is that this, if you actually engaged with it and you're actually honest about it, and you actually had the freedom to discriminate appropriately, you can say this person's a great teacher, but the ninth grade just isn't a good fit for them. They should be in 12th grade or in elementary school.
No, you didn't listen to me. I said that Aiko said that you can move them to another classroom, accomplishing what you just said. 9th to 12th, right? That'll be a different classroom. Moving them.
Do I need to walk you through this?
Oh my!
need to
No,
walk
you
you through
don't,
this.
because you're literally not listening. Because
totally do.
I've already. Okay, whatever. Okay, so then we
You
can't hear.
specifically
We
said
can't hear
you
each other.
specifically said, right? He specifically said that you wouldn't even need to like understand why this was happening. You would just look at their performance reviews and know that they're doing poorly. And what I'm saying is that you're trying to circumnavigate, right? And find a solution that you can centrally plan to determine the efficacy of the teachers. But if you're not actually allowing that freedom to discriminate, and you're not actually allowing people to investigate why those things are that way, right? Some people are going to fall through the cracks that would be good,
Wow.
but wouldn't be a right fit for that class, for that grade level, for example.
Okay, yeah, sure. Amazing,
Yeah,
amazing. The
I
person who is
actually-
pro-discrimination is the person who would say, "Oh, teachers are going to fall through the cracks, and some people are going to be unfairly fired." Amazing. So let's move.
Your
move on.
hatred of
That's fine. That's
rationality
fine.
is so strong that
Clearly,
it
that's what that.
stops you from being
That's
able
clearly
to
what
listen.
it is. Look, we've already gone over time, so I want to try to respect people's time. If you have something else to say, you can say it during your closing. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. We are going to continue on to open walk-on panel right after this. This was an incredible conversation. Shout out to my man Doobie. Doobie is the one who put this on my radar. Fuck. This is a wild conversation. And there's still so much more to it. But in any case, if you guys have been enjoying this conversation, hit that follow button right now. Notifications on so you know I'm going live. It is all the time. Don't want you to miss out on any of our conversations. Facebook, Social Wood Chat for our social media, where we have Twitter, Discord, TikTok, and YouTube. Like, comment, and subscribe. But remember, we still have more content coming up. We aren't ending. The stream does not end. We're going to have an open walk-on panel where you sitting at home, may participate. So stick around. And we can either have more of this conversation or touch on the first one, because there's more stuff there that we didn't get to. So there's plenty to discuss here. So stick around for that. Thank you. But I'm going to give an outro to my to these great individuals. Right. So we start with my man Lactoid. Lactoid, thank you for coming through and making some really good points. Right. You really made me think. So I do appreciate you as always.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was I think a great discussion. I thought the topics were really interesting. I mean, they're really centered around, I think, a subject that everybody should care about, which is student safety, keeping children safe from violence and grooming, really. And so it's important conversations to have. If you liked what I have to say, you can find me on Anti-Communism United on Discord, Twitch, or Twitter. I'm doing some streams, legal and political content. It's a whole bunch of fun stuff. I also wanted to quickly tack on one thing. I'm very much in favor of performance standards. Hopefully we can implement them to all government jobs and really cut down on the chaff of government spending, wasteful government spending. So super big fan of that idea. So thank you.
I love how you snuck that in. Good work. Good shit. All right. I love it, my friend. Okay. Let's go to Scott. Scott, thanks for coming through and being the bane of my progressive existence. But still, again, I'm grateful for you. Thanks so much.
I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. You can find me pretty much everywhere as Fabian Liberty. And if you want to know what type of content I do, all of my content revolves around explaining how it is morally unjustifiable to advocate for anything against the non-aggression principle and the right of private property, and that one cannot logically do so, and explaining how that actually works and remaining principled to the ideals of freedom and non-aggression and conflict reduction, as opposed to anyone that isn't a voluntarist or an anarcho-capitalist. They're objectively wrong and they cannot morally justify those positions. And it shows over and over and over again.
Thank you so much, Scott, and for the spirited conversation. All right, let's go to Corey. Corey, we fought the good fight here, all right? And we slayed our enemies, I think. I'm pretty sure we won. So Corey, thank you for coming through and giving me the backup I needed.
Yeah, anytime. Well, I'm always, happily grateful anytime that you message me to invite me on. Always super appreciated. Try to never take it for granted. And like, yeah, it's been entertaining and just a wild ride that like I can never get enough of. But like, yeah, I'm Corey Campbell. You can find me on twitch.tv, Corey Campbell84, on Twitter and Instagram. Literally, it's Corey Campbell. Lactoid, my fellow American. Always a pleasure. Scott, always a pleasure. And pleasure to meet you, Water Kai. I don't think I've run into you before. And despite the disagreement, always a pleasure, Fanatic, and always interesting, entertaining, and always a pleasure, iCow and Doobie.
That's really nice of you to acknowledge Lactoid now identifies as an so let's go to our friend Water Kai. Water Kai, thanks for stopping by, jumping in here with all the good points.
This was a pure fire conversation, heated all the way through, and I appreciate all the discourse and everyone here and all the different points of view. It was a lot to think of, especially Fabian. A lot to think on. Thank you.
Thank you. Fanatic, who disagreed with I think you disagreed with everyone at some point in time on the between both the topics. I think you disagreed with us all. So thank you for being an extraordinary, right, premier contrarian fanatic. And bringing the fire in the way that only you can. But,
you're very welcome. My name is Fanatic. Listen, y'all niggas can follow me at twitch.tv/Mr. Fanatic. Ask me my takes about white people and pineal glands. You can ask me my takes on anything. I'm a very honest person. Probably the least racist person on this entire panel. I don't think it's racist to say things like that we know we have scientific backing for. Like, I'm not the one out here like claiming like all sorts of atrocities or other nonsense, right? I'm just a person that like studies history, looks at like history and sees things, right? If we want to talk about like calcified pineal glands like that, I mean, there have been studies about those kinds of things. I mean, maybe people should actually present me some studies about them, and then I'll actually change my thoughts or actually educate myself about them, instead of just trying to attack me. But that's all that Scott knows how to do. Honestly, and all the rumors going around, I never said that white women were disgusting. People just be making up lies. I don't make statements like that. I think that's disgusting. I'm not a racist. I think people are gross.
So, oh goddamn! All right, as usual, I'm left speechless. A Fanatic goes, but yeah, look, I don't know anything about these pineal glands. I think that my white brothers out here, right? My white brothers, you are fully capable of reasoning. Okay, right? I'll do the woke thing, right? I think white men are equal to everyone else, right? I'll say it. Look, someone's got to be brave. Someone's got to be
What about
brave.
white women?
White women, they are amazing. They are.
Oh yeah,
a step above the white men.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Thank you. Okay, let's go to our friend Aiko. Fine example of a white man, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to concede my time to Fanatic to explain the calcified pineal gland theory, because I don't know what it is.
Oh no,
You're in for a wild ride.
Well, I mean, listen, I'll just tell you this, okay? Listen, rather than look at the calcified pineal gland, instead of that, you can look at things like the RH factor, right? And like that's something that's present specifically in, actually, maybe I should. Well, you know what? I'll talk to you about it off screen.
Okay.
Off stream, we can
Go
have
ahead.
a conversation whenever you want. You just hit me up in my DMs. I'm always at my computer. Just hit me up, okay?
Got it.
Okay, yeah, great, love it. Hopefully he won't rage out on you, because we can't be sure, right? Fanatic. Let's go to that white rage might show up. Let's go to our friend Doobie. Doobie, thanks so much. Dark Lord and Savior, coming through. And again, thank you for the topic. The topic is really good. So I do appreciate it, friend. And I'd like to talk more about that with you, if you like, DB, because it was really a topic I think there's more for it to dig into. And I didn't hear much of your thoughts.
I think that like I'm allergic to explaining really normal, commonplace social interaction to adults. Like when we get to that level, like I just can't. It's too far. Like I feel like you're just not being honest with it. So yeah, I just didn't really have much to add beyond trying to explain that nipples and dicks are like sexualized. I'm Doobie. I help run the politics server on Discord, discord.gg/politics. It is the best and biggest politics server on the platform. We have tons of AMAs and debates and crazy shit. We had Haas on last week, then we had Vosh on. Vosh is coming on again like this weekend, I think it is. We have a ton of people coming on. Discord.gg/politics. That's where you'll find me.
Hey, thank you so much. And Fanatic, we got to have that conversation on school prayer in school because you are muted.
Here's what I'll do, Prime. I will link you like my pastor's messages, right?
Okay.
Because that was something that's actually a talking point that I got from him. Like, as I said, he's an incredibly intelligent man. And that was like one of his talking points. He was specifically talking about the fact when like there was a Christian flag and it used to be there right alongside the schools at a point where nobody would even dream of shooting up the school and things. And it really does make me, or even the talk like, when I was explaining about how all of the sacred nature of like, childbearing and all that stuff, how it's been removed, which is why people go so ham in like baby showers and all these other things and gender reveals, because they need some sort of excitement because all of the sanctity of the sacred nature of bringing a kid to this earth. That was his talking point. I just steal his talking points because they're so well put together and so genius that it's like, yeah, they resonate. But yeah, I'll just link you his message. But you can't go through the rest of them. But I'll link you a specific message on the YouTube channel and you can listen to that. And you can kind of understand where I'm coming from.
I would very much like that. I would very much like to hear what your pastor has to say about this.
I will.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. We are going to get you on to open walk on panel right after this. But anyone here can join us. If not, that's okay. Thanks for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion with my community. I know they appreciate you so much. I do. Thanks so much. Bye.
Always a pleasure.
Uh,
Lactoid.
Bye.